I'm really honored to be invited to this conference by the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, Central European Academy, Ferenc Mádl Institute, Central European Association for Comparative Law. But allowed me to mention, to say how actually the name Ferenc Mádl plays a very special role for me. As I started with the researches, with researching on transformation process in former Bosnia and Herzegovina or another former socialist country, I have read one article. It was from Ferenc Mádl. It was for me a landmarking publication under the title Restoration of Property in the Central and Eastern Europe. This paper deeply impressed me and actually shaped my view on the property reform and transformation process. I will come to this a little bit later on. But why I have mentioned the transformation at the very beginning of this presentation, actually transformation, codification, Europeization go hand by hand in this process in the post-socialist country. But I'm afraid that Bosnia and Herzegovina is caught in the first part, in this first phase. It's a transformation. I like the movie Lost in Translation, and I said often from Bosnia and Herzegovina is lost in transition. We will see why. I have been struggling for a long time. How will I approach this presentation? Should I give a general overview about past and present and future of Bosnian codification, since I'm sure that majority of you are not very familiar with the civil law and its codification in Bosnia and Herzegovina, or to pick up a special issue and researches presented in more depth. I decide for both, of course, due to the restricted time. I can present this both topic only as a rough outline. What I would like to approach in this, presentation, first of all, perhaps assessment, as the title of the conference said, but it should be short, general or short overview about history of Bosnia and Herzegovina civil law, until the transformation process will focus on the reform of the property law, which is, according to Ferenc Mádl, the key reform within transformation process, and under my opinion, actually the precondition for the codification. Then I would like to talk to present something about reform of the property law, and especially to tell something about collateral law, respectively security rights over immovable and movable. Why? Since this branch of law got a special role in the market economy, and actually has experienced a paradigm shift. And I would like also to point out that exactly this branch of law is very suitable to think about transfer of law and how the legal transplant fit in the legal order of the receiving country. Unfortunately, I cannot share with you any thoughts about planned new civil codification. Bosnia and Herzegovina is complicated country, complicated politically, with complex constitutional structure, and and a little bit enfant terrible of Western Balkan. We are 3 million of people, and I always stress out with 14 legislators, but the acts, laws, which I will approach here in this presentation or solution are enacted on the level of the entities, Republic Srpska, Federation, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Brčko district. And these laws are until now, this is a different law, but harmonized to great extent. So if I said, for example, notary law, I said singular, but I think I multiply this with 3. It's the end, actually, of the day, and during which we have here the very, very interesting, very inspirative presentation. And we are a little bit tired, and perhaps overwhelmed with information, and Bosnia and Herzegovina is, I'm sure, not in the top 10 of the countries you might be interested in. But let me wake your interest, perhaps saying that civil law in Bosnia perhaps can surprise you. Perhaps you expect more exotic topic in this context. Actually, very traditional modern civil law in Bosnia and Herzegovina started at the end of the 19th century with K&K monarchy until Second World War and socialist revolution was under strong influence of the Austrian law in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Austrian Civil Code was not officially enacted, but applied, and is still, we apply this code in some issue and topic. This is answer to you, colleague Dudas. Yes, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the legal rule from Austrian Civil Code are still applied. Then this influence from Austrian civil law did not cease during the socialism, and actually until now, and has shaped the recent reform of the property law in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's under strong influence of the Austrian civil code. The legal order in former socialistic Yugoslavia was characterized by dichotomy between private and state, or the public ownership. The public ownership was had dominant role and was better protected, but parallel to its private ownership order has existed. The private ownership was never abolished, also not over the immovable asset. It was greatly restricted regarding very important real estate, such as agriculture, land, forest, or construction land, but very classic private law regime with classic private law institutes with predominant influence by Austrian law was applied. My colleagues are discuss about this. We had the interruption of the continuity between Kingdom of Yugoslavia and Socialist Yugoslavia, but it was possible to apply legal rule, and colleague Dudas has explained it in detail. I will only say at the moment that in Bosnia and Herzegovina, predominantly legal rule from Austrian Civil Code was used. Over 35 years, these legal rules were applied in wide sphere of the obligation relationship, also on property relationship. And then influence of the Austrian law diminished. 1955, it was the first succession act which was enacted under influence on the Swiss inheritance law, and also obligation act. It was the Professor Konstantinović, which sketch was the base for the law, has actually applied best law approach, research comparatively, and there is not only influence on the Swiss law, but also on the Vienna Vienna Convention on International Sale of Goods on so far. But Swiss law, it's a clear monistic approach for both natural and professional, for B2B contracts and B2C and C2C contract. Also, same legal technique, very simple, very transparent, one paragraph, one sentence without cross remark. And we could not enough point out how the language is important for the codification. I don't know is the legend or true, but on say that Stendhal used to read each moon, each day, several articles for Code Napoleon in order to improve his language. The impact of Austrian law is but still present in Bosnia and Herzegovina, since land registry law and civil procedure is of Austrian origin, until now. How is the civil law codified in Bosnia and Herzegovina? As colleague Duda said, we do not have codification, but it's a codified. Every important part of the civil law or of one civil codification is regulated by separate law and following pandected system. But do we miss a general part of the civil law? Yes, we do, but we have learned to cope with it. For example, the issue of natural person, the issue of person, legal object, subjective right, their exercise, protection, and termination, as well as the legal transaction are not regulated in civil code, which is not existent, but divided, split between different laws. The regulation is not complete and systematic, but existent, almost existent. The general part of civil law is, so to say, fragmented in many legal acts, and some parts of puzzle are still missing. For example, Obligation Act regulates the contract and stipulates that these rules should be accordingly applied to every other art of the legal transaction. Capacity of natural person is regulated in familial law and partially in Obligation Act. But what we really missed is a general regulation on legal persons and legal objects. Regarding, for example, the companies are regulated in detail by Company Act, but all other legal persons are scarcely regulated in special acts. And this regulation is not systematic and is incomplete, and a leading idea is missing really here. While the things, claims, good of intellectual creation are regulated in corresponding laws, personal goods are not. It can be perhaps pettiness of a law professor, but a general regulation on the legal objects could be helped when it comes to recognizing of new values and new entities as a new objects of civil law, for example, data or digital asset. Nowadays, a vast range of other intangible goods is offered now to the legal dogmatic, to the legal practice, but we do not have a definition what could be legal object. Regarding property law reform, I will shorten this part due to the time. I would like also to say that Bosnia and Herzegovina separated from former Yugoslavia as the very important reform of the property legal order were performed. For example, constitutional reform in 1989 and 1990 of former Yugoslavia and in Bosnia and Herzegovina provided for the guarantee of the ownership, they abrogated all quantitative restriction of the private property and equalized all property types, for example, private and public property. For Ferenc Mádl, these three changes represented a cornerstone of the reform of the property regime. And with this reform, the way for the denationalization, the restitution, for return of some assets to the former owner was paved. And what's happened in 30 years? Nothing. We do not have a law on restitution. We have a prohibition which is in force over 30 years, that disposal with some asset which might be subject of the restitution are forbidden, but we do not plan in the moment to have this law. Do we need really law on restitution? It was the first step in other socialist countries. By answering this question, I will quote Ferenc Mádl again. He said, economists correctly remind us that economically speaking, it does not matter who acquires the legal basis of ownership. It's important who can transfer the property. Restitution is absurd and meaningless from this perspective because it imposes looking back towards to irreversible past, instead looking forward toward the world of the capitalism that must be created. I really agree. We are very late. The basis for the restitution in Bosnia and Herzegovina does not exist anymore. High Representative has stated that state Bosnia and Herzegovina cannot take this burden, but what we need a clear political statement. It will not be restitution, and we go only to the future and forward. Shortly to the security right over movable and immovable, a completely new legislation has been enacted, and also infrastructure for effectiveness and security of this right. Enforcement law, insolvency law, notary law, land registry law. But all this part of puzzle were under different influence. For example, notary law, strongly influenced by German law. Enforcement law and public register law, Austrian. Insolvency law was drafted up in German model. Property law, as I already said, Austrian provenance, and security right, register pledge over movable was a clear transfer from the Article 9 of the Uniform Commercial Code of USA. So, how true is the statement from Otto von Bismarck, as he said, laws are like sausages and it's better not to be there when they are made. But surprising but true, despite the fact that this branch of law stands under different influences, and that is obviously that the reforms in this branch of law were not enacted simultaneously and coordinated, that systematic approach was missed by the legislator, there is a little to complain about this legislation. It offers good and practical solutions which guarantee efficiency and security for the creditors. It sounds like a positive assessment, as a successful reform, but perhaps is still only an open option. Namely, in the implementation of this law, much is far away from this optimistic assessment I have given. For example, there is some solution in our legal order that can solve some problem which we have in the bank practice, but no one uses it. For example, we have adopted land charge beside hypothec or mortgage. Land charge, it was transfer of the, not of the legal proposal for BGB, but from whole acquis developed in Germany from scholar, from the practitioner in the bank practice. And we have now mortgage, which is less accessory after property law reform. And the banks were very happy with this, but and every attempt to try to explain that land charge has even more advantages was failed. Now we have with the framework credit contracts several problems in the practice which could not be solved with this mortgage, but could be solved with land charge. No one uses it. Or, for example, in the regarding this American register pledge law, it's a very simple approach. Every security rights on each present or future item can secure present and future claims. Each security rights is submitted to the same rules, and enforcement is very liberal. We use judges, courts use general enforcement procedure. They are very ineffective regarding movables, and also this system and this register system is almost used for registration of the contractual security right on cars, but you can it's possible to register lion, to register seizure. It's mean security rights based on the court decision. So if you have access to this register, you can see each encumbrance of this asset and the priority of this different right. These possibilities are really not used in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I will finish also with one quotation. It's now Kronke, former director of the UNIDROIT, describing the same registration concept in the Cape Town Agreement. He said, simply, liberal, realistic, actually modern. And we have this system, and we did not use this. And beside another problem, it's a further problem in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you very much for your attention.